Hey, it's Tim. Let's bake spicy olive bread. Start with 3/4 cups pitted olive chopped and add to that 2 cloves of garlic minced. Mix it and set it aside. In a mixing bowl, put 16.5 ounces or 468 grams of bread flour, 2 teaspoons of instant yeast, and 2 teaspoons of salt, 2 teaspoons of red pepper flakes. Whisk that to combine and set it aside. In a 2-cup measure, add 315 grams or 10 2/3 ounces of water, 2 tablespoons of white sugar, and a tablespoon of extra virgin olive oil, and whisk that to combine. And now, with the mixer on the lowest speed, slowly add all the liquid and mix for about 2 minutes until it's completely combined and no dry flour remains. It's a good idea to stop the mixer. I did it after about 30 seconds so I can scrape down the bowl and help everything get mixed together. And after 2 minutes, it should look like this. Now we'll build some strength in the dough and make it something that will bake into a nice loaf. I raise the speed to the second speed on my mixer, which is medium-low, and let it go for 8 minutes until the gluten's developed and it looks like this. It's a nice strong dough. It is fairly well hydrated, so it still sticks to the bottom of the bowl. Now, with the mixer on low again, slowly add the chopped olive minced garlic mix. The recipe says this should take about a minute, adding a little bit at a time. I actually let it take about 2 minutes, maybe a little bit more, so that it was thoroughly combined. This is the 22nd recipe out of the book Bread Illustrated that I've baked, and I bake 2 or 3 times a week, and I've actually started to get the hang of it. And this is the stage where, with less experience, I would think I need to add some flour to this dough, because this looks like it's not really dough, it's almost like batter. But with experience, I've learned this is okay. And I'm going to turn it out of this bowl onto a floured surface. And with the help of my bowl scraper, I'm going to get this to form a nice ball that I'll set aside and let rise for the first proofing. Once I get this out of the bowl, this takes about 30 seconds. And I think there's no way other than just experience. Just bake a lot of bread, and at least that's how it works for me, and get comfortable working with a fairly wet dough like this. Now, using my hands, I'm turning the dough. I'm using my left hand to push the dough under itself, the right hand to keep it turning, and in a second I'll drag it across the counter a little bit to help form a nice taut surface. It's a nice smooth dough. And then I'll place it in a lightly greased plastic bowl. I just use vegetable oil spray. And it goes in the bowl seam side down, and it'll take anywhere from an hour and a half to 2 hours to fully rise. I'm shooting this video in north central Florida. It's humid and it's fairly warm. The temperature yesterday got up to about 88 degrees. If you live in a colder, drier climate, it might take longer, but this dough took about 90 minutes to double in size, at which point I turned it out upside down onto the counter and now gently pat it out and then fold all the sides into the middle. Gather it all together. And then place everything seam side down. Repeat the dragging motion, again trying to create a nice tight ball. Using my dominant hand, the right hand, to turn the dough around. There was a little air bubble that I popped just there. Turn the dough around, use the other hand to push it under, drag it across the counter. Nice, smooth, clean ball of dough. Now this is going to bake in a cast iron Dutch oven. Hey, focus! It's going to bake in a cast iron Dutch oven on a sheet of parchment paper and make a sort of a rustic looking loaf. So one of the things, if I weren't following this recipe to the T, which I am, one of the things that I would do differently, I would probably put the dough in a bowl to rise for the second time, upside down, and I would not put the dough into the Dutch oven until after I preheat the oven with the Dutch oven inside it, so that the Dutch oven was hot when the dough goes in, which is a sourdough baking technique. So the point of baking it inside the Dutch oven is to hold the steam inside so it develops a nice crust and it helps it bake. This worked. I just would have probably, again, if I weren't following the recipe exactly, I would probably have heated the Dutch oven first and then put the dough in right before it went in the oven, rather than doing it this way, which is to put the dough in and let it finish its second proof, which could take anywhere from 30 to 60 minutes. I set a timer for 45 minutes, as I figured, again, given where I live and what the temperature and humidity are, that would be sufficient. So I lightly covered it with a plastic wrap that's got a little bit of vegetable oil spray. Parchment has a little bit of vegetable oil spray, as you saw. And then I'll set it aside and let it do its second proof. When it goes into the oven's going to be at 450 degrees. So somewhere during that 45 minutes, I set the oven at 450 degrees to preheat it so that it would be good and hot by the time the dough was ready to go in. It bakes at 450 for the first half hour with the lid on. And then the lid comes off, the temperature is reduced to 375, and it bakes for another 20 minutes or so until the dough is fully baked. Now, using a very sharp knife, I'm going to score the dough, and it gets a little bit hung up here on the second half, but I just turn the knife around and do it the other way. And this is one of those things that the first time I tried to score dough, it was terrible. It was terrible. But I've gotten to the point now where I just stick a knife in and drag it across and go with it. And again, it's just a matter of getting comfortable with the process and saying to heck with it. So now it's gone into a 450 degree oven where it'll bake covered for the first 30 minutes. And after that, you take the lid off. You can see that the dough has done its oven spring, and it's risen some more in the oven. And now take the cover off, put it back in the 375-degree oven for about 20 minutes until the internal temperature of the bread reaches somewhere between 205 and 210, which is what my digital thermometer reads, 210. And the dough is ready. We now have bread. It's just a question of letting it cool so that we can see how it looks on the inside. So take it out of the Dutch oven. And remember, this Dutch oven is wicked hot, hence the use of these nice oven mitts. The parchment allows you to take the dough out without sticking your hands down in the middle of a scalding hot Dutch oven. We'll take it off the parchment and let it cool at room temperature. It'll take at least 2 hours for this dough to get below 110 degrees. I actually went outside and did some yard work for about 3 hours, and the temperature was down to 90 degrees, which is plenty cool enough to slice and eat. Looks like a nice rustic loaf of bread. If I had risen this in a banneton, the wooden bowl to rise bread, and then baked it in the hot Dutch oven, I think it would have risen up more rather than gone out and become squat as it is. But no matter, it smells great, it looks good, it's got a nice texture, a nice crumb, the bottom is nicely browned. It's just a nice loaf of bread. So I think I'll make a nice sandwich with some ham and Genoa salami, and I'll eat it. Thanks for watching.